Din Djarin is, by all accounts, one of the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Beskar armor, a flamethrower on his wrist, and zero hesitation when it comes to pulling the trigger. But the people who work with him, they don't get Beskar. They get a front row seat to every disaster this man walks into, and a disturbingly high chance of not walking out. So today we're breaking down every job associated with Din Djarin and why none of them are survivable. Starting with the one that sounds the safest on paper, Bounty Hunting Guild Contractor. The Bounty Hunters Guild has rules, a whole professional code. Don't kill the bounty unless you have to. Don't interfere with another hunter's quarry. Don't betray the guild. Reading that list, you'd think this was a well-regulated trade union with dental benefits. And on paper, Grief Karga ran a tight operation on Navarro. Show up, get your puck, bring in the target, collect payment. Simple, clean, professional. But here's the thing, even when the system works, every single job means tracking down someone who absolutely does not want to be found. Those people tend to shoot back. The real problems start when a certain small green child enters the picture. The Imperial Remnant under Moff Gideon was offering Beskar ingots for Grogu's capture. That's the kind of payday that makes a hunter forget every rule in the code. Hunters lined up for it, chasing a target connected to people who had zero intention of leaving witnesses, and then Djarin made it worse. After the guild gave him the job, after the client paid him in Beskar, after the entire system functioned exactly the way it was supposed to, Djarin looked at the baby, said actually no, and walked out with the asset. Every rule in the code, broken. The moment he went rogue, Grief Karga put a bounty on his head and sent the entire guild after him. Former colleagues became hostile combatants overnight. So your options as a guild contractor are: take a routine job and hope your target doesn't get lucky, take the Imperial contract and get quietly murdered for knowing too much, or just be nearby when Din Djarin decides mission parameters don't apply to him anymore. This is somehow the least dangerous job on this list, which is, you know, not ideal, but if you think a professional guild with rules and structure sounds bad, wait until you hear about the job with zero rules, zero structure, and a Tusken Raider problem. Moisture Farm Laborer. You'd think the safest job in the Star Wars universe would be the one where literally nothing happens. You wake up, you walk outside into 2 suns worth of heat stroke, you fix evaporator, you haul water, you go to bed. Repeat for the rest of your tragically short life. Moisture farming on Tatooine is the galactic equivalent of watching paint dry, except the paint is trying to kill you. Here's the thing, Tatooine moisture farmers lived under constant threat from Tusken Raider raids, Jawa scavenging runs, brutal sandstorms, and the kind of dehydration that turns a person into jerky. Owen Lars bought a protocol droid and an astromech specifically because he couldn't keep up with failing equipment on his own. That's the reality of moisture farming. You're pulling endless shifts, maintaining evaporators that break constantly on a planet where the sand itself has a personal vendetta against you. The Empire taxed farms so aggressively that entire homesteads were barely scraping by, and when stormtroopers showed up looking for missing droids, they didn't politely knock. They burned the Lars homestead to the ground with Owen and Beru still inside. Farmers weren't just underpaid, they were disposable. And that's the baseline. That's the job on a good day when nobody interesting is around. Now add Din Djarin to the equation. Djarin hired Queel, a moisture farmer and Ugnaught settler on Arvala 7 to help him track a bounty in 9 ABY. Simple job, right? Guide the Mandalorian through the desert, collect your payment, go back to your evaporators. Except Queel got pulled deeper and deeper into Djarin's business, eventually reprogramming a lethal assassin droid and personally escorting a force-sensitive child. He died on the way back to Djarin's ship, gunned down by scout troopers. Hey, wanna help me track something real quick? Sure, what could go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong, but the real nightmare isn't the one mission, it's the pattern. Once Imperial remnants start hunting for anyone who's had contact with Djarin or the child he's protecting, your quiet little farm becomes a liability. You signed up to fix pipes. Now stormtroopers are sweeping nearby settlements for information about a man in Beskar armor, and nobody who gives useful answers gets to keep farming peacefully. At least moisture farming is just passively lethal. Wait until you hear about maintaining the ship he actually flies around in. Razor Crest engineering assistant. Picture this. You've just landed your dream job as a starship mechanic. Good pay, steady work, one client. Except your client is Din Djarin, and your workspace is the ST-70 assault ship, a pre-Empire military gunship that was already decades old before the New Republic existed. Not because anything's wrong with it, because everything about it was designed for war, and war machines don't care about your lunch break. The Razor Crest needed constant attention. We're talking a military-grade hyperdrive crammed into an ancient frame where every system ran hot, every seal degraded faster than it should have, and you were perpetually 3 repairs behind schedule before Djarin even got shot at, which happened on basically every single mission. The man could not go anywhere without someone trying to kill him. Anywhere. The Navarro job alone left the ship riddled with black blaster scoring and hull breaches. That's not a ship coming home from a mission. That's a colander shaped like a spacecraft. The Sorgan job ended with the Crest taking hits from an ATST, a vehicle that had zero business fighting a parked starship. You'd finish welding one plate and hear the proximity alarm screaming again because Mando decided to pick a fight with Imperial remnants for the 4th time that week. But here's the thing, you didn't even need hostile fire to have a bad day on this ship. On Tatooine, the port engine got wrecked during a crate dragon hunt Djarin wasn't even supposed to be part of. On Maldo Kreis, ice spiders infested the hull and chewed through internal wiring. You weren't just a mechanic, you were an exterminator, a welder, and a therapist for a ship that the galaxy kept trying to eat, which is, you know, not ideal. By the Frog Lady mission, the Crest could barely hold atmosphere. Djarin was flying with a cracked cockpit canopy held together by what appeared to be optimism and spite. Every re-entry was a dice roll on whether you'd all burn up like a firework, but none of it mattered. During the Tython mission, Moff Gideon's light cruiser hit the Razor Crest with a single orbital bombardment. Total destruction. Nothing left but a crater and slag. Every repair you ever made, every spider you scraped out of the ventilation system, gone in half a second. The only things Djarin pulled from the wreckage were a Beskar spear and a metal ball from a shifter knob. That's it. I don't know what to tell you, and at least the Razor Crest only carried cargo. Wait until you hear what Djarin started loading into the hold as passengers. Passenger transit support. Let me paint you a picture. You're not a soldier. You're not a bounty hunter. You're the guy whose entire job is to make sure a container of frog eggs doesn't get too warm. That's it. That's the gig. You are, in every measurable way, the galaxy's most overqualified refrigerator technician. The Frog Lady needed transit to the estuary moon of Trask so her spawn could be fertilized by her husband before the eggs died. A canister full of unfertilized amphibian eggs sitting in a biocontainer that needed to stay warm and stable at all times. No fluctuations, no bumps. You're babysitting temperature-sensitive caviar on a ship held together with Beskar scraps and denial. And if you mess it up, an entire bloodline goes extinct. Cool. Add that to the list, but the eggs aren't what kill you. The root does. The Frog Lady couldn't travel by hyperspace because the jump would have destroyed her eggs. So instead of a quick, clean trip, you're sublight crawling through open space with zero backup, zero escort, and every pirate and Imperial patrol in the sector free to spot you on scanners. Your options were get robbed or get arrested, and both ended with you floating in the vacuum of space. And then there's the cold. During the ice planet detour on Maldo Kreis, the Razor Crest crash landed into a cave system and the hull cracked open. Din Djarin, the Frog Lady, and a baby were stuck in a wrecked ship on a frozen world with a canister of dying eggs and an entire nest of ice spiders pouring out of the cavern walls. Not pirates, not Imperials, spiders. You survived the crash only to almost die because the local wildlife treated your ship like a buffet, which is, you know, not ideal. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. The Frog Lady's destination on Trask wasn't just some random moon, it was Bo-Katan Kryze's operating territory. The passenger's route channeled Djarin directly into contact with other Mandalorians, meaning the whole transit functioned less like a favor and more like a calculated redirection. You weren't crew, you weren't even cargo, you were a variable in someone else's chess game, and nobody told you the board existed. So let's review. You maintained egg temperature, you survived a crash landing on a frozen hellhole, you fought off giant ice spiders with nothing but vibes and a flamethrower, and your reward was discovering that the entire trip was designed to put your boss in a room with people who wanted something from him, and you were completely expendable the entire time. You could have gotten the same experience delivering pizza in a war zone, except the pizza wouldn't have gone extinct if you dropped it. But frostbite and political manipulation are practically a vacation compared to what comes next. Village Defense Volunteer. Here's a fun hypothetical for you. Imagine you're a krill farmer on Sorgan. You wake up at dawn, you harvest your ponds, you go to bed. The most dangerous thing in your life is a sunburn. Then one day, a guy in full Beskar armor walks into your village with a green baby, and within 48 hours, you're holding a stick he sharpened for you, standing in a trench, staring down a stolen Imperial ATST that's about to stomp your entire livelihood into paste. Welcome to the Din Djarin Community Outreach Program. Klatooinian raiders had been shaking down the village for months, stealing crops and killing anyone who pushed back. The villagers' plan was to hire someone to make the problem go away. Reasonable. What they got was a Mandalorian who looked at a raider camp, saw a full Imperial assault walker parked in the middle of it, and said, yeah, we can take that. Not we, as in him and Cara Dune, a trained rebel shock trooper. We as in you, Cornelius, the guy who's been farming shrimp for 30 years and has never held a weapon heavier than a soup ladle. Djarin gave these people maybe 2 days of prep. 2 days against raiders backed by military hardware that could step over their trenches without slowing down. The plan was to lure the ATST into a pond and blow it up, which which, to be fair, actually worked. But the margin of error was exactly 0. One panicked farmer breaking formation and the whole village gets flattened. And here's where it gets dark. The raiders had Imperial equipment, Imperial tactics, and the organizational structure of soldiers who'd served under a real command hierarchy. These farmers were going up against trained killers because Djarin needed a place to hide with Grogu. The village wasn't his mission, it was his rest stop. He turned someone else's home into a battlefield because it was convenient. The kicker is that even after the ATST went down and the raiders scattered, Djarin had to leave anyway. A guild tracking fob pinged his location, which meant every bounty hunter in the sector now knew exactly where this quiet little fishing village was. So the people who nearly died defending their homes got a follow-up gift, a target painted on their backs. Nobody ever checks back in on those villagers. Nobody asks if the raiders came back with reinforcements. Nobody wonders whether the guild hunters who tracked Djarin's fob decided to interrogate the locals on their way through. You helped the Mandalorian fight off one attack, congratulations. Now you get to live with the consequences of being associated with the most wanted man in the Outer Rim, which is, you know, not ideal, but at least the Sorgan villagers had the option to stay behind their barricades. The next job on Djarin's resume doesn't even give you that luxury, Imperial Remnant infiltration. Here's a fun hypothetical for you. Let's say Djarin needs to sneak into an Imperial base, not a theoretical one of the actual facilities run by Moff Gideon's remnant, and for some reason you're coming with him. Maybe you're the tech guy, maybe you're the distraction. Either way, you should probably start writing your will now. Gideon's operation wasn't some disorganized group of leftover stormtroopers playing soldier in the Outer Rim. This was a fully funded, fully staffed military remnant with classified research facilities, active cloning programs, and security infrastructure that makes a maximum security prison look like a public library. The guy orchestrated the Purge of Mandalore. He wiped out nearly every Mandalorian on an entire planet, and you're going to waltz into his base with a bounty hunter who has a personal vendetta against him. Cool, great plan. Let me explain what you're walking into. These facilities weren't just guarded, they were designed to kill intruders. Blast doors, scanner arrays, platoons of stormtroopers on rotating patrols, and dark trooper droids that could punch through Durasteel. The dark troopers alone should disqualify you from this mission. These things were essentially flying tanks shaped like people. One of them nearly killed Djarin in single combat, and he's wearing full base guard. You're wearing what? A jacket? But let's say you somehow get past the exterior defenses. You bypass the scanners. You don't trip any alarms. Congratulations, you've made it to the part where everything gets worse. Because Gideon's inner labs were running experiments on Force-sensitive blood, specifically Grogu's blood, trying to create something that shouldn't exist. The test subjects had a 100% fatality rate. Every single one. And the failed experiments didn't just die quietly. They became unstable, violent, the kind of thing you absolutely do not want to encounter in a dark corridor, while Djarin is 3 rooms ahead of you doing his thing. And here's the part nobody thinks about. Djarin doesn't sneak. He tries, occasionally, but the man's default problem-solving method is violence. So your infiltration becomes a firefight within about 4 minutes. Now you're in the middle of an Imperial base, alarms blaring, stormtroopers converging from every direction, and your partner just whistling birded a guy through a wall. You're not the asset in this scenario. You're the liability. You're the person Djarin has to keep alive while simultaneously fighting an entire military installation. The survival math here is genuinely horrible. Djarin walks out of these situations because he's covered in the strongest metal in the galaxy and has decades of combat training. You walk into one of these situations and you become a statistic, but if sneaking into an Imperial base sounds bad, at least you're not the person responsible for keeping a tiny green war crime alive 24 hours a day. Navarro Cantina staff. Working in a cantina sounds simple. You pour drinks, you wipe down the bar, you smile at the regulars. Maybe you overhear some interesting conversations. Sounds like a decent gig in a galaxy full of terrible ones. But if your cantina happens to be on Navarro, and your regulars happen to be bounty hunters, and one of those bounty hunters happens to be Din Djarin, your life expectancy drops faster than a Jawa off a sandcrawler. Navarro wasn't some backwater pit stop. It was the operational hub for the Bounty Hunters Guild, meaning every single person walking through those doors was armed, paranoid, and one bad day away from turning your establishment into a crime scene. Grief Karga ran the whole operation out of that cantina like it was a corporate office, handing out bounty pucks between rounds of spotchka. Very normal workplace environment. Here's the thing about serving drinks to bounty hunters. They don't tip, they don't make small talk, and roughly once a week somebody pulls a blaster over a territorial dispute about a target. You're not a bartender at that point. You're a hostage standing behind a wooden counter that wouldn't stop a plasma bolt. The no weapons inside policy existed in theory the same way speed limits exist on highways. Everyone knew about it. Nobody followed it. But the real problem wasn't the hunters. It was what happened when Din Djarin Din showed up after a job, because Djarin didn't just complete bounties, he completed bounties and then immediately made enemies of everyone in the room. The man walked into Karga's cantina, handed back a target he'd been paid to deliver, and declared war on the entire guild in about 45 seconds. Every hunter in that building went from guy at the next table to active combatant while you were still holding a tray of drinks. And when the shooting started, nobody was aiming around the staff. Blaster fire ripped through that cantina like it was made of paper. 3 walls, a bar, and 0 architectural consideration. For what if 40 armed professionals all start shooting at one guy simultaneously? The answer is that everything behind the bar explodes. But let's say you survived that particular evening. Congratulations, you now work in a cantina that a Mandalorian has publicly declared as hostile territory. Every Imperial scout, every remaining guild hunter, and every opportunist with a death wish knows exactly where Djarin's enemies gather. Your workplace is now a target, not because of anything you did, because you poured a drink for the wrong guy on the wrong night. The cantina staff on Navarro didn't sign up for firefights, Imperial surveillance, or becoming collateral damage in one man's crusade to protect a small green child. They signed up to serve drinks, which is, you know, not ideal, but at least the cantina staff could technically quit. The people handling Djarin's next problem didn't even get that option: Grogu's unofficial babysitter. Let's talk about the single worst job in the entire galaxy that somehow doesn't come with hazard pay, a health plan, or even a basic orientation packet. You are Grogu's babysitter. Congratulations, you're now responsible for a 50-year-old toddler who can lift a mudhorn with his mind, but still tries to eat random eggs off the floor. Here's the thing, on paper, babysitting sounds safe. You're not storming an Imperial base. You're not fistfighting Klatooinian raiders. You're watching a small green child. Maybe you feed him, keep him out of trouble, make sure he doesn't wander into a Sarlacc pit. Easy, right? Turns out Nombrit Grogu isn't a normal kid. He's a force-sensitive being with powers he barely understands and 0 impulse control. He's choked people out for touching Din. He's stopped a charging mudhorn mid-air like it was a balloon. He's healed fatal wounds with his bare hands and then passed out cold for hours, leaving you completely unprotected in whatever hellhole Din parked you in. One minute he's cooing at a butterfly, the next he's ragdolling a stormtrooper into the ceiling because someone raised their voice, and you're standing 3 feet away with presumably a regular human skeleton. But the force tantrums aren't even the real problem. The real problem is that every faction in the galaxy wants this kid. Moff Gideon burned through entire batches of test subjects trying to harvest his blood. Imperial remnants deployed dark troopers and a full cruiser just to grab him. Bounty hunters across the Outer Rim had active pucks on Grogu for months. You're not babysitting, you're guarding the most wanted asset in the post-Empire galaxy while armed with, at best, a stern look. And Din's solution to your safety? Leaving. He just leaves. He drops Grogu off, says something like watch him, and walks into a building full of people who want to kill him. Sometimes the ship gets attacked while he's away. Remember the ice spider nest? Giant spiders crawling through the hull, Grogu on board, and if you were the designated caretaker in that scenario, your life expectancy just dropped to about 4 minutes, which is generous. Let me put it another way. Luke Skywalker, a fully trained Jedi Master, took on the job of raising Grogu. The kid lasted maybe a few months before choosing to leave. Luke Skywalker couldn't keep him engaged. You, a random person with no force sensitivity and no lightsaber, are supposed to do better, while also not dying. Cool, add that to the list. Din genuinely thinks he's doing you a favor. He thinks leaving his kid with you is the safe option. For the kid, maybe. For you, standing next to a tiny green magnet for every violent lunatic in the galaxy, not so much. But hey, at least you're not participating in ancient warrior cult rituals with people who solve disagreements with flamethrowers. That's next. Covert ritual participant. Every single job on this list has one thing in common. It's not the danger, it's not the violence. It's not even the fact that something is always exploding within a 30-foot radius of this man. It's the fact that Din Djarin genuinely does not understand why people keep dying around him, and that's the part that would get you killed faster than anything else. Djarin isn't malicious. He's not sending you into danger on purpose. He just operates at a level of intensity that treats nearly getting vaporized as a normal Tuesday, and he expects you to keep up. The Razor Crest gets shredded? He's already thinking about the next ship. An entire village gets targeted by Imperial scouts because he stopped there for lunch? He's gone before the fires are out. Grogu throws a 10,000 volt force tantrum and you're standing too close? Well, you should have known better. Somehow. Here's the thing, Djarin follows a code. The Raisonnaire, the way, whatever you want to call the elaborate set of rules that govern every breath he takes. And that code is built for exactly one person, him. It accounts for his Beskar armor, his combat reflexes, his decades of training, and his frankly unreasonable tolerance for pain. It does not account for you, a regular person with regular bones and zero jetpack experience. The Children of the Watch operate with a 100% adherence to their creed. Deviation isn't frowned upon, it's punished. The Foundling Ritual, the creed recitations, the loyalty oaths, every single one performed under the understanding that failure means exile or worse. These people don't have hobbies, they have oaths, and Djarin is their poster child. He went years without removing his helmet in front of another living being. Years. Most people can't go 20 minutes without checking their phone, and this man maintained an ironclad religious commitment to face concealment across multiple star systems, countless firefights, and at least one occasion where he was literally dying and still wouldn't take it off. That level of discipline sounds admirable until you realize what it means for you as a coworker. It means he will never compromise. It means if the choice is between saving your life and upholding the way, you're already a footnote. But let's be honest, you were a footnote the moment you signed up. Every role we've covered today, from pouring drinks on Navarro to babysitting a tiny green war crime, shares the same fatal flaw: you are temporary. Djarin is permanent. The bounty hunters who worked with him, dead or scattered. The villagers on Sorgan, left behind. The Razor Crest repair crew, vaporized along with the ship. The man is a walking extinction event for everyone in his orbit. And the worst part is, he's not even trying. He's just living his life, following his code, taking the next job. And you'd be standing next to him, thinking everything's fine, right up until the moment you realize the blaster fire isn't stopping. The Beskar isn't covering you, and nobody is coming back for the guy without the helmet. Not all survival stories have a moral. Sometimes the lesson is just this: some people are built for the chaos, and you are not one of them. Din Djarin would survive working with Din Djarin. You wouldn't. And honestly, that's not even an insult. That's just math. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.